All right, thanks for coming, everybody. So, my training and background has literally nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about here, but I figured I'd host this as an info session for our department and anyone else who has been able to join. And we're going to be recording this, so I'll be posting it online for anyone else who was not able to join. I'm going to talk about our experiences going solar in Columbus. And there's a general overview I've got here, which is I'm going to talk a little bit about the economics of solar in 2019, talk about whether your house is right for solar. We'll get into some details about our house, questions about sizing a system, and system monitoring. We'll also talk about financing a little bit, and then we'll do some Q&A. But if you guys have questions along the way, just jump in at any time. Okay, so let's start with the economics of solar in 2019. The first thing is that prices have exponentially fallen. So if you looked in the late 70s, when silicone photovoltaics were first available, they were about $76 per watt, and now they're less than 30 cents per watt, and they continue to fall. That's a 99.7% decrease in 40 years. Just in the past 3.5 years, you can see we've gone from about 369 to, this isn't even this year, but it's a lot less than that today. So we continue to see declines of a few percent per year, despite some things that are going on globally, including tariffs and other such things. So all right, prices have fallen dramatically. Another thing that we have that's really possibly making right now a sweet spot in time to go solar is that we have federal tax credits called the investment tax credit. And they've been in place for a long time, and every once in a while they threaten to go away, and then Congress decides, okay, we're going to extend it. I would say earlier this year, pretty much nobody in solar thought that they were going to be extended, but it's possible to be extended again. But assuming that they're not, you'll get 30%. You'll get a 30% tax credit on a system that is purchased in this calendar year, which you can declare on your taxes in April. And for 2020, it'll drop to 26%, then 22%, and then it'll be 0% afterwards. So if they don't get extended, this is a pretty good time to get in on solar. I think that I was in a rush to get them as soon as possible, but I think that given that solar panels are falling a few percent per year, if you get till next year, you'll probably end up paying about the same as what you would this year.
So what's the credit on the installation cost?
Yeah, so the credit's on everything that's involved, including if you have to replace some roof shingles that would be under the solar panels, although there's some debate about what you can really include in your total bill for the cost.
Does there have to be a certain size system, or would that be on any, like if you wanted to just start getting into it? Would it
There might be an upper limit. I think if the system is too large, maybe you wouldn't be eligible for the credit, but there's no lower limit in terms of how large.
You don't have to convert your entire house.
Yeah, I don't think it matters at all. Yep. So these are average systems, the prices of average systems installed this year. I've got links to all these references, and I'll share all the slides. So a 6 kilowatt system on average in the US is $12,500. 10 kilowatt system is $20,800. And that's after the 30% credit. So let's talk a little bit more about these economics of solar. One of the issues that we will have when we try to transition to this renewable resource as a source of our energy is that there's a mismatch between production and consumption. We are mostly powered by coal and natural gas if you're plugging anything into your wall in your house, and those can be burned at any time. And even so, if there's a shortage at a moment's notice, we have plugged into our grid peaking utilities, which turn on very quickly and turn off very quickly. But if you have something mounted on your roof, you're going to see a mismatch because you can't control when production is going to happen. So if we look month by month, this is a typical graph showing the production of a solar array, and this is month by month consumption. We see that mostly this is due to in-house air conditioning, that that begins to peak in the warmer months and extends past our summer solstice, which would be June 21st-ish. So there are months where you're overproducing with a typical solar array and underproducing with that same array. Likewise, if we looked across a single day, even on a sunny day where you get this nice peak at around noon, if you have a south-facing array, it will begin to decline. Well, we tend to use a lot of electricity after we get home from work, and if it's dark outside, none of that electricity is coming from the grid. It's coming from your panels. It's all coming from the grid. Day by day, we have this issue too. So this is 4 days from our array. It was raining this day, sunny, partly cloudy, mostly cloudy, I think. So you can imagine that in periods of time when your air conditioner spikes here, or even if there's a cloud cover and you're not producing much, but your air conditioner is on, you're going back and forth between drawing from your panels and drawing from the grid. So this is kind of a problem. But there's a solution, and it's called net metering. This is something that doesn't have to be in place. It would not be in place if you're living off the grid in the woods somewhere. But it's in place based on laws and regulations that require some form of net metering. So what is net metering? Basically, as we've kind of talked about already, when it's sunny out, you're producing energy in your panels. And during those times, because we're interconnected with the grid, we can actually send energy to the grid so that it can be consumed by other people who need that energy at that moment. And the grid can compensate by producing less on its end from the utilities. At nighttime, you draw from the grid. And net metering says that they will pay you some amount of credit when you send energy to the grid, and that can be used against the power that you draw from the grid when you need it. So current Ohio policy is quite favorable. It doesn't have to be this favorable. It's less favorable in some states. But for every unit in kilowatt hours that we send to the grid, we get about 13 cents. And that matches the unit that we get when we draw from the grid. So that's pretty nice. It may not last forever, but that's where we are today. So generally your surplus months on the bill get credited to your deficit months for up to 12 months. If you are overproducing across a 12-month period, you're not going to get paid by your utility to have solar. They're only going to allow you to get to a zero bill, minus the monthly charges to be connected. Okay. So a lot of people always ask, what about batteries? Should I be using batteries? For instance, I read about the Tesla Powerwall, or I saw it in a mall somewhere. Well, there are lots of advantages to batteries. First of all, imagine if you're living off the grid. You can be storing surplus energy when you're producing, and then use that on a deficit when you have a deficit on a day-by-day basis. So that's one advantage. If you're on the grid, you can also save money if there's something called time of use rates or time of use billing. I've got another slide that talks about what that is. It's just basically that at some moments in time, electricity from the grid might be more expensive than at other moments of time. And you can wisely decide when to draw from the grid and when to store in your battery, for instance overnight, and then to run off your battery during the day, even if it's cloudy. That even works if you don't have solar. And it can be used for power outages. So a lot of people, at least me when we went into this, we thought that we'd get to use our solar array as backup when there's an outage. But that's not the way it works, because we have an interconnection agreement, and we're effectively backfeeding the grid. So if there's a lines worker who's trying to repair fallen tree limbs or something, they can get shocked. So by law, your whole solar system has to shut down when there's a power outage, unless you hook up something like this, which works kind of like having a backup generator, where you would need a transfer switch, and you can run off of your solar panels under those circumstances. So that would be the battery advantage. So for some people, it's not a financial concern. They just want to have that backup, so they buy the battery. Disadvantages are that these batteries are really expensive right now. They will cost as much as a whole solar array. And if you're trying to do it to save money, that's going to be all out the window. The power wall costs about $6,800, like retail right now. If you add the installation costs, it ranges from $9,000 to $16,000, which is a lot. And there's a little financial benefit right now because we have net metering. When you have net metering, you don't have to worry about whether you're overproducing or underproducing. The grid is your battery. And of course, we don't have time of rates either at this moment. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. I would say, though, that batteries are really great, and the technology is coming a long way as the economies of scale increase. You're seeing utilities adopt batteries. Some parts of the country, it's actually profitable to have batteries. Prices are falling. So perhaps in 5 to 10 years, that'll be the time to add on a battery. At least that was the decision for us. Some people might want to do it now. Some people might never be interested in doing it. But upgrades are always possible. Okay, so other possible future changes to look for in the economics of solar right now. Some states are looking to change net metering regulations. And of course, if they change, it's largely going to be more favorable to the utilities. There are sensible arguments for this. We're getting a credit for the full amount of what we're producing. And that doesn't take into account that someone else has to maintain the grid and worry about when the surplus is coming. So it's a fair point that maybe we shouldn't be getting 100% credit for when we're producing. But as we think about a smart grid in the future of how power is going to work in this country, rooftop solar, I think, plays a really important role in that. So we should always have some kind of agreement that it's favorable to all parties. But I don't make policy. I don't think really anyone out there believes that net metering will be totally eliminated. So that was an important factor in our decision to figure out how it would work out for us financially. And if net metering were gone, it would not work out for us financially. So I feel pretty assured that it's not going to completely go away. It might just get a little bit less favorable. And time of use rates may be coming. And let's talk about time of use rates. So this is an example that's currently in place in Southern California, Edison. So your cost, I didn't put the actual cost in here, I stole this from this link over here. Their electric is so much more expensive than ours, like multiple times more expensive than ours. But they have different rate categories. So overnight, you're on an off-peak rate, and then there's mid-peak, and then fully on-peak, which is between noon and 6 p.m. And then mid-peak is between 6 and 11 p.m., when most people are not producing energy at all from their solar array. So if we were to adopt a structure like this, that would have obvious consequences for how things work in Ohio. AEP has upgraded most of your homes to smart meters. And you'll notice this if you go onto AEP online, and you can actually get billing data from your meter in 15-minute increments. So if you've got that meter in place, that's getting them one step closer to starting the time of use rates. But there are lots of roadblocks that still exist in Ohio. So what are the roadblocks? Just not to bore you with too much detail, we have a completely deregulated electrical production market. So you can actually choose who produces your electricity through the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. And that's really great. You can just shop based on what rate, whoever offers the cheapest rate. The problem is that if you have time of use rates, it becomes really difficult for customers to standardize between what one company is offering and what another company is offering. That's just one challenge to implementing time of use rates. There's a plan that Ohio has, although there's no timeline that's been set. Many, many states have time of use. I'm sure eventually we'll have time of use. Time of use is good. Time of use will effectively fix problems in our grid in terms of when energy is produced, and it's going to make energy more efficient. So I think we should all be in favor of it. But if we ever do get time of use, given that peak production is between 12 and 6 p.m., the economics of some arrays, particularly ones facing west, become much more attractive because they pick up more sun at the later hours of peak use. And then batteries at that point could substantially reduce your bill. So in some states that have a lot of sun, you can buy a battery at today's prices without even a solar array charge the battery at night when electricity is dirt cheap, and then run your house during the day, and effectively break even. So all the economics will change in the future as batteries get cheaper. And you can do other things like fire up your water heater when you're on off-peak rates. And now we have smart water heaters that know when the time of use rates are cheap, and that's when they heat up. And of course, people charge their cars at night. So there are smart chargers now that you plug it in when you get home, but it doesn't start charging until the rate change happens. We're going to see this happening with lots of different pieces of our home. As our homes get smarter, there are now electrical panels that are available that run different circuits depending on balancing out the whole grid and what the rates are. Okay, now, is your roof right for solar? So this is a really good tool, Google Project Sunroof. You can see in a heat color map what your roof looks like and whether or not it's estimated to catch a lot of sun. Of course, what you're seeing here is south-facing roofs produce the most. But so why is that? I think probably most people in this room understand that we're in the northern hemisphere, and over here the sun never reaches totally directly above us, even on June 21st, because it's over the equator. So anything facing south on June 21st, which is the summer solstice, is still going to be better than something totally flat. And then at the lowest point on which the sun rises in the winter solstice, you still want to have a south-facing roof. But that's not everything. There are two really key factors. One is your azimuth, which is the direction that the array is facing. So in this case, south would be 180 degrees. You can have west, and you can also have east. Sorry, this just died. I don't have a lot of luck with laser pointers. So you can have east and you can have north. And of course, north is not very favorable for solar. So let me just see if I can quickly fix the batteries here. Or I'll just keep going. Just bear with me. Well, I'll just use my, I just remembered this is one of these pointers that doesn't have a battery. It needs to be charged. So it's dead. Oh, here, we've got another laser pointer. Perfect. Okay. Also dead. I don't know. I think the pointer's not working. It's all good. So there's also tilt, which plays a really important role as well. We've got some steep roof pitches all the way down to a flat roof. So you can see that there are some solar panels that change their tilt and their azimuth over the course of the day. The azimuth would be that angle that's in blue, and the tilt is the angle that's in red. But we're going to be talking about fixed solar panels that don't move. So what we really care about from these two factors is our overall solar insolation. That's how much sun is reaching your panels. And we can calculate this in Columbus as a function of azimuth and tilt, even accounting for historical weather trends, which Columbus is one of the top 10 cloudiest cities in the US. So we need to be aware of that. And of course, the economics still work out for us, but you can go onto this website, it's called solmetric.com, and it'll produce across 90, that's east facing to south, all the way to west facing in terms of your azimuth, and tilt being flat roof all the way to a solar panel mounted on a wall, which you would never want to do. And what's really interesting about this is that, yeah, you want to land in that sweet spot where you've got a south-facing roof that's tilted about 32 degrees. So the optimal tilt, it even tells you right here, is 32 degrees. And to get 99 or 100% of your peak output, you want to be in this range over here. But yeah, so that's about south plus or minus 15, 32 plus or minus 8 for your tilt. But the loss of efficiency outside that range is actually pretty gradual. And given how cheap solar panels are, it actually becomes pretty worthwhile even to go out to here. So you're still losing only about 10% of your peak efficiency within this blue line. So you start seeing fairly west-facing arrays if they're the right pitch, but you wouldn't want a west-facing array that's on a really steep roof. Okay, so other factors to consider, you need to have shade loss in mind. So the house on the left is totally out of the question for solar, whereas the one on the right doesn't seem to have any problems. You need to consider the age of your roof and what kind of roof you have. There are different mounting systems depending on the type of roof. But if your roof is about 15 years old, that's going to be a tough situation because the array should last for 30 years. Roofs last for 30 plus years. So unless you're ready to replace a 15-year-old roof just to go solar, you have to think about that. And then there's issues of city approval. So where I live in Grandview, solar arrays are subject to aesthetic approval. And largely what that translates to is if they don't want anything that might impair the perceived aesthetic value of the house and bring down home values for your neighbors. There are many solar arrays that are unsightly based on these types of measures. So in Grandview, you cannot have solar panels that face the street and are easily visible. Just for funsies, I found an aesthetic hall of shame online. So this person tried to maximize all the space that they could get. So it's a personal decision, but the problem is if your neighbors don't like that, then you're gonna have a problem. This one kind of speaks for itself. And I'm going to assume that this might be a west-facing array because the roof is just pitched a little too steep for good production on a west-facing array. So they remedied that problem just by putting some scaffolding underneath. Looks safe. Okay, so I guess in the end, the question you need to ask is how optimal does your system have to be? Because solar prices have fallen so dramatically, you don't need that perfect south-facing 32-degree tilt roof. There are many non-optimal systems today that still make really good financial sense. And I'm going to tell you about our house, which I think falls into that category. This is from our backyard, viewing the rear of our house. When we moved in 2013, this is what our house looked like. There wasn't an obvious place to put solar. In the front was going to be a non-starter for the same reason. This roof faces west, and on the other side, of course, faces east. So our roof pitch was a little steep. There just wasn't a clear place to put all of them. So we just didn't continue thinking about it. Plus, in 2013, solar was more expensive. We've done some remodeling. So we added a bathroom and a bedroom upstairs. And as a result, we realized that we have this nice, pretty shallow pitched roof with a lot of real estate that could fit a solar array. So that back roof is about a 3 in 12 pitch. That's 3 feet in rise for every 12 feet of run, which is about a 14-degree tilt. And we'll talk about how feasible that is. So this is an overhead view of where the solar array is mounted. So you can see it's west-facing. It's a little north of west-facing, in fact. So the ideal being 180 degrees, which would be south. Pure west would be at 270. Our house is about 275 in its azimuth, which is not an ideal direction at all for solar. In fact, if you remember this thing that we looked at before, they don't even cover anything beyond 270 degrees. But they will still calculate it for you. That's where our array lands. And guess what? It's only 15.8% less efficient than the ideal south-facing array. You could even find a north-facing array that would work if it's a really shallow pitch. It's almost a flat roof. So, if you're thinking a little bit outside the box, you'll see that it can be quite sensible. So that's what it looks like. You have to stand on our garage to get that picture, our detached garage, just because it's high up there and the roof pitch is kind of shallow. So our installer was EcoHouse Solar. I'd be happy to tell you about our experience with them. We had only positive experiences. They were really great. It has 21 panels. They're 325 watts each. They use Hanwha Q cells. You can go online and look up ratings on every kind of panel that you would think of. Total system has 6.83 kilowatts as its peak output. We're never actually going to see 6.83 kilowatts at any given moment, only because of our latitude. We're kind of far north. We're not directly facing south. But theoretically, that's its peak. And that's just calculated by multiplying 21 times 325. We have a 6,000 watt or a 6 kilowatt inverter. So these panels produce DC power. They need to be converted to AC power. And they go through a central inverter that converts 6 kilowatts. So 6 kilowatts is less than 6.83. And the most we'll ever produce is around 6 kilowatts anyway, at any given moment. We lose about 5% from shade. So there are a couple trees close to the horizon. That's not too bad. So all in all, we're doing pretty well. And our estimated annual production is 7,436 kilowatt hours. So for every hour that you're producing 6 kilowatts, that's 6 kilowatt hours. And over the year, we're producing 7,436. So we got an estimate from our production estimation from, that made sense, from our installer. But you can go and check on this really amazing website from the National Renewable Energy Lab. It's called the PV Watts Calculator. First, there's a link right there. You just plug in your location, and you go. And then you get to fill in the system size, the expected system losses, which is based on shade and other factors, the tilt of the array, and its azimuth. You can also add a few other things here. Our inverter efficiency was actually greater than the default, which is pretty nice. The technology has come really far. And this is what it estimates. Over the course of the year, this is how much solar radiation we're getting, how much AC energy we should be producing. Comes out to 75. I'm not sure why that says 7557, that says 7556, but it's pretty darn close. And then if you happen to put in what your electricity currently costs, it'll tell you how much you're going to save in that 1 year of production. All right, so that's our production is over there, and over here is what our electric bill savings are expected to be over the first year. This was a very close match to our installer's quote, which gave us even more confidence in going with them. All right, so our total costs to do this included the panels, the inverter. We put on an optional squirrel guard, which is a few $100s. If you have any trees that, any way a squirrel could get onto your roof. They like to chew wires, so it seemed like a good way to protect our investment. We didn't need to upgrade our electrical panel, but if you live in an older house, you might have 125 or 150 amps of service. You're going to have to bump that up quite possibly. And it can cost like $3,000 to upgrade an electrical panel. So you need to think about that. And then there are permits and other miscellaneous costs that come in here and there. So we paid $19,350 for this array. And we are expecting that after we claim our 30% federal tax credit in April, that will be a net of $13,545. Now we can look at our savings. We have some assumptions that we can put into place to project our total savings. First is that you have to figure out how much more expensive grid electricity is going to get every year. We honestly don't know. So you could model it at 4%, which is kind of standard. You could also try it at 0% just to see worst case scenario. The other thing is that in the panels that you buy, there are guarantees for how much they will degrade each year. So you get a warranty that over 25 years, the panels should be producing no less than, say, 87% of what they were when you first bought them. In our case, ours are guaranteed to degrade no more than 0.54% per year. So you can figure that out, what your cumulative electric bill reduction will be. For us, we are expected to recoup our initial investment at 12 years. And then in the ensuing years, up to 30 years, we will have spent $48,000 less on our electric bill. So Again, our break-even point is there. The savings would be the difference between that and what we actually paid for the system. So we expect to save $32,000 over 30 years. That's assuming no unexpected costs. Built into this is actually, we do anticipate that our inverter will need to be replaced at least once. So we built one inverter upgrade in there because inverters don't really last nearly as long as solar panels. Between 10 and 15 years, they should break down. Okay, how to size your system? You need to estimate your current usage. So if you pick out your current AEP bill, it shows you your trailing 12 months of usage in kilowatt hours right on there. You don't want to worry about the cost so much because that's kind of meaningless. It's just kilowatt hour production. And you can just see for us, we're big users. We use 11,579 kilowatt hours over the previous 12 months. That's more than the Ohio average of about 10,000. Our house was built in 1929. It does not have insulation on the main floor. And we like air conditioning. We are estimated to produce 7436, as I mentioned in the previous slide. So we're in a situation where we're not fully offsetting our usage. We're offsetting 64% of our usage. There are some reasons for why that's the case. First of all, we filled up the roof with panels. We could have gotten higher efficiency panels, but that would have substantially driven up the price and pushed back our payback period. So there's that. And also, you know, we wanted to decide how much should we be spending right now on solar panels. So I think that everyone needs to make those decisions. But just by removing 7,400 kilowatt hours of production from the grid, that will take out about 11,000 pounds of CO2 per year. For us, that's extremely important. Okay. Things to think about, though, when you set up your system, especially if you have the roof space that can handle it. You want to figure out if you're planning on any usage increases. So for us, our garage is ready for an electric car. We ran the wiring all the way out there, but we don't have the car yet. We're not sure exactly when we'll do it, but if you can figure out here, a Tesla Model 3 gets approximately 4.4 miles for every kilowatt hour that you charge it. And if you drive about 10,000 miles a year, that's going to be another 2270 kilowatt hours that you want to add to your expected production, to your expected need, your consumption. You might also want to start thinking about converting to electrical appliances. For us, we're concerned, we have natural gas, we're concerned about the methane involved. Methane is 10 times worse than carbon dioxide in terms of its greenhouse consequences. So we want to reduce our usage of natural gas in our home. So right now we have a pretty low efficiency gas water heater, and it's going to die in the next couple of years. For us, we're going to switch to a hybrid electrical heat pump water heater. These are relatively new. They're extremely efficient. They're electric powered, and they use heat exchange. So you can read all about them, but they really don't cost that much to run. They're expensive to buy, so there's a large capital outlay in the beginning. But that takes up in an average house about 1,000 to 1,300 kilowatt hours a year. So if you're going to add some of these things, then you want to consider oversizing your system based on your current usage. So check how much capacity AEP is going to allow beyond your 12-month bill. You have to set up an interconnection agreement with them to hook up your solar panels. And if they say you use 10,000 kilowatt hours in the last 12 months, why are you getting a 14,000 kilowatt system? You'd have to have that conversation with them. I don't know their exact policies on the matter because we did not exceed our consumption. All right, so obviously you need to figure out how much your roof can fit when you don't have any room. Some people have no room on their roof, or the roof's not facing the right way, or they don't have enough room. So other places to think about would be putting panels on your detached garage or a carport. So like in this case, you'd obviously need to make sure that you have a way to get the power to your main electrical panel. And something I really like is the solar pergola. There are many pictures of these you can find online. Here's just one example. I think that they're in many cases more accessible. You can put them in a place in your yard where you're getting more sun. So people get creative about this. Undersizing is also common. That's what we did. You can work within your budget, and you're still doing something. You're reducing your carbon footprint and saving a lot of money, I might mention. So our system, as I mentioned, covers about 60 to 65% of our usage. Okay, so now let's talk about monitoring. I can go log in to, this is the website that's run by the maker of our inverter. Your inverter is measuring everything that comes in, and it's pretty smart. It does some pretty cool stuff. So I can do an inverter demo right now, actually. I just realized I didn't set it up in advance, so maybe we'll do the inverter demo when I finish my slides. But you can look at day-by-day production. It has some weather forecasts. Of course, we all get weather forecasts from everywhere. And you can look at your layout and a whole variety of other things. You want to be checking in on this occasionally because if you have a failure in one of your panels, you'll be able to identify that pretty quickly. Plus, it's addictive. So this is the thing that's converting your DC to AC power. It tracks your production. Ours is hardwired to the internet. We just run an Ethernet cable to it. So you can do setup and configuration and monitoring. I also have a phone app that I check a lot during the day. And as I mentioned, it's addictive. It's also educational and fun. It's a great way to show people the benefits of solar power. So I'll show the demo afterwards. Let's talk about financing. So there are different ways to finance this. You can just buy it, which is a substantial upfront investment, as I just discussed. So in some cases, you can get a subsidized loan. There are some government programs that are currently in place. I'm not sure how long they will remain in place. For instance, one bank that I know for sure that handles it might be the only bank that actually knows a lot about this program is Key Bank. I can provide their contact information. I've spoken to somebody there about potentially doing a loan. We decided ultimately against it. So if you're buying a house, you can add it to the cost of your mortgage, or you can just get a home equity line of credit. So for us, we weren't sure about paying it upfront right away. We have a home equity line, so we made two very big purchases right around the same time. We bought a car and a solar array. So we figured, at least for us, for the moment, if we need to lean on some other liquid source of cash, we had a home equity line. So there are lots of ways to do it, but you'll definitely get the lowest interest rate if you have one of the solar loans. Other people use either leasing or power purchase agreements. So a company owns the panels, they install them on your roof, and now instead of paying AEP, a monthly bill, you pay that company. And the agreement is that it's supposed to be cheaper than what it would be from the grid. Of course, you're not going to save nearly as much money as you would if you owned it yourself, but you can put $0 down for a system like this. So you're paying a monthly bill to them, as I mentioned. So the power purchase agreement is that not only do they own it, but you're also agreeing for how many years you're going to be buying from it and at what rate. So it does involve making some predictions about what electric is going to cost in the future and what's reasonable. So there's a little more risk in something like that. And it should come with some guarantee to be cheaper than the utility. The disadvantages to that are that, this is a really big one, is that it will complicate the sale of your house if you have to move. Buyers don't want to buy a house that has a solar array that's owned by somebody else that you have to work out a contract with. Some people are into it, but it's just a consideration. And of course, you're not going to save as much money as if you own the thing, because that company needs to make money too. Okay, some really helpful resources that we found while we were researching this was EnergySage.com has an extensive knowledge base about going solar, and solar reviews. When you're looking at installer companies, you want to check them out online. A lot of the reviews are pretty detailed. People post specifics about their system, in some cases pictures, and that was a pretty valuable site for us. All right, so that's, I can answer a bunch of questions that relate to, we have a central inverter, but there are other things called microinverters where each panel has its own inverter. And other questions about how do you plan for a system expansion, electric panel requirements, what's the deal with those Tesla solar roof shingles, what you can do with a ground mount array, how these things are warranted or guaranteed when you're figuring out which panel you want, what happens with insurance for your home, how they affect your resale value, lots of other questions. I didn't want to just have slides about all that stuff, so yeah, that's basically it. I can demo the system, or we can do questions, whatever you guys want to do. You want to see what the system looks like?
I have one question. Assuming that we ever see snow again, is there any consideration to worry about the snow covering the panels, or do they have a way, just because of the being dark in color, that they would melt the snow? Or?
Yeah, so they're designed. The panels are designed to bear a lot of weight. They're very strong, and they're a bit slippery. But you know, if you have the panels on a roof that doesn't have a very steep pitch, it could accumulate snow. So you won't be producing any solar while that's happening. It's generally in the winter months when you're not producing a ton anyway. But I suppose if it were really important, you could get up on that roof and wipe off the snow. But yeah, I think in most cases, it's not a super huge concern.
Related, it's like do we have to clean like power?
You do not have to clean them. They clean off from the rain, so there is no expected maintenance at all on these.
Does it have any implications for like your roof warranty? So for instance, if you got
So
a
it
roof
could-
installed recently.
So a lot of people get warranties on their shingles when they install new roofs. I don't know. I suspect that if you mount a solar array on top of it, they could claim that, you know, the reason why you had a failure was because of the shingles. I mean, because of the panels. One thing that I will say is that most reputable solar installers have a 10-year guarantee for no water intrusion into your home, and they will fix it if you have a problem. So it's kind of important to us because, I mean, it's important to everybody, but we have a kind of shallow pitch to that roof. It's not super shallow. It's not. You can still put shingles on it, but we put an ice barrier underneath the shingles, and we were concerned that when they mounted the brackets that hold the panels, they might be causing some water intrusion or some little cracks that would allow water to intrude. But they were pretty confident that it wouldn't be a problem, and they backed it up with a 10-year warranty. So far we haven't seen any water intrusion. Although we haven't gotten a ton of rain recently. Today, it's been pretty hot, but we peaked at around 4.11 kilowatt hours, and there's been some clouds. Heat matters, so as you get past about 80 or so degrees, you start to see slight degradation, and it depends on the panel. Some of them perform better in the heat. I don't think we have to worry about it too much in Ohio. We're not in some of the warmer climates, but I haven't noticed much on a super hot day in terms of loss of peak energy. But we can see the current power that we're getting right now, how much we've produced today. This time of year, on average, we should be producing roughly 20-ish per day, and we've got several hours left to go today. But that accounts for days with sun and rain and so on. We produced 812.87 this month. That's going to be a fairly substantial offset. It's more than what we initially expected, and that's simply because we haven't gotten much rain. We produced, so this year, 3.41 megawatt hours. So I said in this calendar year, we're expected, well, in a 12-month period, we're expected to produce about 7,500 kilowatt hours. This is about 3,400 so far. We can look by week. So you can see day by day, there's variations. This is a pretty good day for solar, and we peaked at around 4.17, whereas June 21st, we'll peak at 6. kilowatts. And that's just because we're not at summer solstice anymore. In fact, we just passed the equinox. This is every day over the course of the month. We can look over the course of the year, month by month. So July was a pretty good month. And then, as expected, we're going to decrease until we get down to about 200 to 300 kilowatts in the months of December and January. Okay, so this is also nice because you can look at layout. So this is a physical layout where you can see these are our 21 panels. This is how much each of them is cumulatively produced over the course of the day. They're not all the same. We actually have a chimney that's right here, so it provides a little bit of shade in the morning. So you can see these two panels produce a little bit less than the other surrounding ones. And you can also look at a logical layout, which is just how they're wired up. So, yeah, we can make different types of charts, we can export data, we can make reports, export those. You can look for any alerts. You can also set up your app so that you'll get a push notification for an alert. And then there's an administrative interface, which is, I can change the picture of the site or other kinds of stuff. I can decide if I want to make it public or have other types of access. That people have SolarEdge embedded in some website somewhere else. But this is a really fun app. So I basically export the data, I drop it into another sheet that exports data from AEP, and then we can compare what we produce versus what our bills are, and see how much we're saving. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got.